The dimension existed outside time's jurisdiction, a void, where causality held no dominion and moments stretched into something that could not properly be called eternity. Whis stood at its center, his staff planted in nothing, watching his student with the patient attention of one who had witnessed universes bloom and collapse across eons. Goku floated before him, eyes closed, silver light flickering across his form in irregular pulses. "Concentrate, Goku-san," Whis said, his tone carrying the gentle firmness of instruction given 1,000 times before. Ultra instinct must become more than technique. It must transcend conscious thought entirely. The Scion's breathing steadied. The silver aura surrounding him intensified, then wavered, then intensified again. Each fluctuation sent ripples through the dimensionless space distortions that shouldn't exist in a realm already divorced from natural law. Whis tilted his head slightly. Something felt different. The ripples weren't behaving as they should. "Interesting," he murmured. Goku's ultra instinct flared brighter, responding to stimuli that existed beyond Dragon Ball's reality. The technique was performing exactly as designed, reacting to every possible threat, every potential danger, every conceivable force that might approach its wielder. But in this timeless training ground, it had found something new to react against. A frequency, alien, wrong. The silver light around Goku began to pulse in rhythm with something neither of them could see. Whis's eyes widened fractionally, the first genuine surprise he'd shown in centuries. "Goku-san, stop, immediately." But Ultra Instinct didn't stop. It couldn't. The technique had locked onto the foreign frequency like a warrior recognizing an opponent's killing intent. Goku's body moved without permission, his aura reaching toward the wrongness, trying to counter something that existed in a different creation entirely. The fabric of the no-time dimension screamed silently. A tear appeared in space, except it wasn't space being torn. It was something deeper. The barrier between realities, the fundamental wall separating one multiverse from another, split open like skin beneath a blade. Red light flooded through the gap, not the red of fire or blood, but something stranger, something that hurt to perceive directly. The color of dimensions folding against each other, of the membrane that kept infinite universes safely separated. "No, no, no," Whis said, urgency replacing his usual calm. He moved forward, staff raised, but the rift was already expanding. The Bleed DC's fifth-dimensional space had been punctured from the outside by a force it had never been designed to resist. Goku's eyes snapped open, confusion replacing the empty serenity of Ultra Instinct. "Whis, what's happening? I feel weird, like something's pulling." The suction was immediate and absolute. The rift didn't care about power levels or divine training. It simply was a wound between creations that demanded to be filled. Goku's body jerked forward, silver aura flaring desperately as Ultra Instinct tried to protect him from a threat it couldn't comprehend. Whis lunged faster than light, faster than thought, but the gap between angel and student was growing with impossible speed. His fingers missed Goku's outstretched hand by inches that might as well have been light years. "Bista-sta." Goku's shout carried genuine fear for the first time in years as the red light consumed him. The angel's staff struck the rift's edge, divine energy pouring into the wound, forcing it closed with the authority of one who maintained the balance of 12 universes. The tear sealed with a sound like reality exhaling, leaving behind only the faintest shimmer in the air. Silence returned to the no-time dimension. Whis stood perfectly still, staff still raised, staring at the space where his student had been moments before. "Oh dear," he said quietly. The words carried a weight that would have terrified anyone who truly understood what it took to make an angel sound concerned. That wasn't our multiverse. He lowered his staff slowly, mind already calculating possibilities and implications. The bleed was not part of the angel's domain. It existed in a different cosmological framework entirely governed by different fundamental forces. His authority ended at the boundaries of the 12 universes he served. Beyond that, in the space between entirely separate creations, he could not simply reach through and retrieve a lost Saiyan. Whis closed his eyes, extending his senses as far as they could reach. Nothing. Goku's energy signature had vanished completely, not suppressed or hidden, but genuinely absent from every universe under angel jurisdiction. "Goku-san," Whis said to the empty space. "I sincerely hope wherever you've landed, they appreciate visitors, because bringing you back may require something rather unprecedented." He turned and began walking, staff tapping against nothing with each step. The Supreme Kai would need to be informed. Lord Beerus would be absolutely insufferable about this. And somewhere in a creation that operated on entirely different rules, his student was falling toward a destiny that neither Dragon Ball nor DC had ever anticipated. The rift was closed, but the consequences of its opening had only just begun. Metropolis gleamed in the afternoon sun, its towers reaching toward clouds that drifted peacefully across a sky unmarred by crisis. The city breathed with the rhythm of 8 million lives moving through their ordinary miracles, unaware that reality's architecture was about to shift beneath their feet. The air above Centennial Park twisted, not dramatically, not with thunder or flame, but with a wrongness that made nearby pigeons scatter and caused a street musician 3 blocks away to hit a discordant note without knowing why. Space folded against itself like paper, creased by invisible hands, and through the crease came something that didn't belong. Goku hit the grass hard enough to leave an impression, but not hard enough to crater. He rolled twice, came up on his feet purely by instinct, and immediately fell over because the world was spinning in directions that shouldn't exist. His stomach lurched. His Kai sense, usually as reliable as breathing, was screaming static at him. "Okay," he said to the grass, which was very green and very close to his face. That was weird. He pushed himself up more carefully this time, swaying slightly as his body remembered which way was down. The silver shimmer of Ultra Instinct faded from his aura, the technique releasing its hold now that the immediate danger had passed. Goku looked around, taking in his surroundings with the simple directness of someone used to waking up in strange places after explosive events. The park was nice. The buildings were really tall. The people staring at him from the nearby walking path looked concerned but not terrified, which was usually a good sign. He waved. "Hi. Sorry about the entrance. Didn't mean to scare anybody." 17 blocks away, sensors built into the watchtower's subspace monitoring array registered something impossible. Energy signatures that matched no known classification flooded the detection grid. Not magic, not kryptonite radiation, not apocalyptian tech, not any of the 10,000 threat profiles cataloged across 50 years of superhuman activity. The reading simply labeled it unknown. Nix Uotan felt it first. The monitor stood in his sanctum beyond reality's normal boundaries, maintaining his eternal watch over the 52 universes that comprised DC's local multiverse. His role was observation, protection, and occasionally intervention when the fundamental structure of creation itself came under threat. He turned his vast attention toward Earth Zero and froze. Something was there that shouldn't be. Not alien in the conventional sense of coming from another planet or dimension. This was alien in the truest meaning of the word, fundamentally other operating on principles that didn't match the source's design. It existed outside the framework. He monitored a presence that made no sense within the cosmological structure he existed to protect. Fascinating, he said, his voice carrying across dimensional boundaries to reach the watchtower directly. And deeply concerning. Superman was mid-flight over Metropolis when the alert came through. Batman's voice in his ear carried the particular edge that meant something genuinely unusual was happening. Unknown energy signature. Centennial Park. Readings are off every chart we have. On my way, Clark said, already changing course. What kind of signature? If I knew it wouldn't be unknown. A pause. The monitors are watching. That's never routine. Superman descended toward the park in a controlled arc, landing 30 feet from the figure standing in the grass. He took in details with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd made first contact with countless unknown entities, entities. Male humanoid, dark spiky hair, orange and blue clothing that looked almost absurdly casual. Appeared to be in his 30s. No visible weapons. Posture relaxed to the point of carelessness, and the energy. Even without instruments, Superman could feel it now that he was close. A pressure against his skin that felt nothing like kryptonite's nausea or magic's crawling wrongness. This was something else entirely vital and almost warm, like standing too close to a star that burned with life instead of fusion. "Hello?" Superman said, keeping his voice steady and his hands visible. "I'm Superman. Are you hurt?" Goku's face split into a grin of such genuine friendliness that Clark felt his defensive posture ease slightly, despite every tactical instinct screaming not to. "Superman. I've heard that name before, I think. I'm Goku." He scratched his head, a gesture of pure befuddlement. "And no, I'm fine. Just really confused. Where am I exactly?" "Metropolis on Earth." Superman studied the stranger carefully. "Where did you come from?" Goku looked up at the sky as if hoping the answer might be written there. "I was training with Whis in this place outside time, and then my ultra instinct started acting weird, and there was this red light, and then I fell through, and now I'm here." He said it all in one breath, the explanation tumbling out with the artless honesty of a child recounting their day. Before Superman could respond, 3 more arrivals announced themselves. The Flash appeared in a burst of displaced air. Wonder Woman descended from above with the lasso of truth at her hip, and somewhere nearby, Batman was certainly watching through a dozen different surveillance angles. Barry Allen stared at Goku, his scientific mind trying to process the readings his suit was feeding him. "Okay, I'm just going to say it. Those energy levels make no sense, like thermodynamically impossible levels of no sense." Diana's eyes narrowed, but not with hostility. She'd been a warrior long enough to recognize another when she saw one, regardless of how harmless they appeared. "You carry yourself like a fighter." Goku brightened even more. I love fighting. Are you fighters too? You look strong." "We're trying to understand what happened," Superman said carefully. "Can you tell us more about this training?" "Oh, Whis is my teacher. He's an angel. We were working on ultra instinct, which is this technique where your body moves without thinking, and..." He stopped mid-sentence. His expression shifted from cheerful explanation to something more instinctive. The air around him changed, a subtle intensification that made the hair on the back of Superman's neck stand up. "You're getting closer," Goku said, and there was no threat in his voice, just simple observation. "Your hand." Superman looked down. His hand had drifted toward Goku's shoulder, a gesture of reassurance he'd made 10,000 times with 10,000 people who needed comfort or guidance. He was still 3 feet away. I was just... Goku moved. No, that wasn't right. Movement implied travel from one position to another. Goku simply was in a different location, his body having relocated itself without apparent transition. Superman's hand met empty air. The Saiyan now stood 5 feet to the left, maintaining the same relaxed posture, the same friendly expression. "Sorry," Goku said, sounding genuinely apologetic. That's the Ultra Instinct thing. It happens automatically when someone gets too close too fast. The Flash's jaw had dropped. He dodged Superman before Superman touched him. The processing speed alone. Fascinating. Wonder Woman said, her hand resting on her lasso, not drawing it, but ready. Batman's voice came through everyone's comm simultaneously. Recommendation: maintain minimum 10-foot distance. Whatever that reflex is, it's operating faster than conscious reaction time. Goku heard the voice and looked around confused. Who said that? A friend. Superman said, his mind racing through implications. The stranger wasn't hostile. Every word, every gesture, every aspect of his body language screamed friendly and harmless. But that dodge had been instantaneous, absolute, and apparently involuntary. Which meant even if Goku wanted to be touched, grabbed, or restrained, his body would defend itself without his permission. "Listen," Clark said slowly. "We're not your enemies, but you appearing here caused some unusual readings. We need to understand what's happening. Can you work with us on that?" "Sure, Goku said immediately. "I need help getting home anyway. Do you guys know anything about dimensional travel, or the bleed wisp might be able to find me if I can figure out where here is relative to there?" The Flash and Wonder Woman exchanged glances. Superman's expression remained carefully neutral, but inside he felt something cold settle in his chest. "You know about the bleed," he said. It wasn't a question. "Not really. I just fell through it. It was really red and made my stomach feel weird." Goku paused. "Is that bad?" Before anyone could answer, the air pressure dropped. Just slightly, just enough to notice. Goku's head turned toward the sky with the sudden focus of a predator sensing prey, except his expression carried excitement instead of aggression. "Oh," he said, "something powerful just noticed me." 17 million miles away on Apocalypse Darkseid sat on his throne and felt the anti-life equation shudder. Apocalypse breathed poison into the void. A world-sized monument to tyranny, where suffering had been industrialized and despair flowed through pipes like water. Fire pits burned eternal between factories that processed souls alongside metal, and the sky held a permanent gray that spoke of hope murdered so thoroughly that even its memory had been outlawed. In the throne room at the planet's black heart, Darkseid sat motionless. He had occupied this seat for millennia, his form carved from stone and malice eyes burning with the Omega effect that could erase existence itself. Around him, the architecture of Apocalypse pulsed with the rhythm of the anti-life equation, that fundamental formula which proved freedom was illusion and submission was the only truth. The equation flickered, not failed, not weakened, but disrupted like a perfect frequency encountering static from a source it had never been designed to account for. Darkseid's eyes narrowed to twin embers of divine fury, focusing on a disturbance that registered as both infinitesimal and impossible. Something had touched creation that did not originate from creation. A presence that the anti-life equation could not categorize, could not subsume, could not even properly perceive. It simply existed in defiance of the fundamental mathematics that governed all existence within DC's cosmology. Darkseid stood. The movement sent shockwaves through Apocalypse's power structure. Servants cowered in distant chambers. Desaad, monitoring torture chambers 3 levels below, felt ice grip his spine. The master rose only when reality itself demanded attention. Curious. Darkseid said, his voice carrying the weight of graveyards. A frequency outside the equation's domain, not magic, not from the source, something other. He extended one massive hand, and the air before him split open in a burst of color and sound. The boom tube tore a hole through space, connecting Apocalypse to Earth Zero in an instant. Darkseid did not step through. He had no need. He sent something simpler, an avatar, a projection of power sufficient to investigate without risking his true form's direct presence in reality. The avatar manifested above Metropolis like a storm front given malevolent purpose. It stood 30 feet tall, carved from shadow, and cosmic authority eyes burning with borrowed Omega fire. The Justice League saw it materialize, and their blood went cold. They knew this presence. They knew what it meant. Darkseid Wonder Woman said, already drawing her sword. The Avatar's gaze swept past the heroes as if they were insects beneath notice. Its attention locked onto Goku with the intensity of a predator, recognizing prey that defied classification. The Scion looked up at the towering figure with his head tilted, more curious than concerned. "Wow," Goku said. "You're really big and really strong. I can feel it from here." The Avatar spoke with Darkseid's voice, each word hammering against reality like a judge's gavel. "You, anomaly. You exist in contradiction to the natural order. Explain yourself." Goku scratched his head. "I don't really know what that means. I'm just lost. Do you know how to get back to Universe 7? Irrelevant." The Avatar raised one hand, and the Omega effect gathered in its palm, red and writhing and absolute. "You will be studied, cataloged, integrated into the equation. This is inevitable." Superman stepped between them, cape billowing in the energy discharge. "Darkseid, he's not a threat. Stand down. Stand aside, Kryptonian. Your presence is tolerated only because it amuses Darkseid to let you struggle. This being is not part of your crusade." The Omega beams lanced out twin streams of erasure that bent space itself as they crossed the distance in a fraction of a heartbeat. They struck toward Goku with the inevitability of gravity, the fundamental force that deleted things from existence by declaring they had never been. Goku wasn't there. The beams carved through empty air and detonated against the ground, leaving smoking craters where grass and earth had simply ceased to be. The Saiyan stood 6 feet to the right, his expression puzzled. "That was dangerous," he said, genuine concern in his voice. "You're trying to kill me." The Avatar's eyes widened fractionally, the first hint of emotion bleeding through divine indifference. It fired again, a barrage, this time Omega beams, crisscrossing the space. Where Goku stood into patterns designed by algorithms older than Earth's sun. Goku moved between them like water flowing past stones. His body relocated itself with each attack, ultra-instinct processing threats faster than conscious thought could ever manage. He didn't look strained. He didn't look like he was trying. He simply existed in the spaces where death wasn't his form, flowing through the assault with the ease of breathing. "Okay," Goku said when the barrage paused. "I get it now. You're a bad guy." His aura ignited. Not silver this time, but the brilliant blue of Super Saiyan blue, his hair's shifting color as divine ki flooded his form. The pressure change was immediate and catastrophic. Windows cracked for 3 blocks. The air itself seemed to compress under the weight of power that operated on principles foreign to DC's physics. The Justice League felt it like a wall of heat from a suddenly opened furnace. Superman's invulnerable skin registered strain. Flash's connection to the Speed Force wavered. Wonder Woman's divine senses screamed warnings about forces that shouldn't coexist in the same dimensional space. Goku moved. One instant, he stood on the ground. The next, he was airborne, fist drawn back, accelerating from zero to speeds that made sound an irrelevant concept. The punch connected with the Avatar's chest, and the impact was apocalyptic. The shockwave shattered every window within a mile radius. The Avatar's form buckled cosmic architecture, cracking under force, delivered with surgical precision. The projection of Darkseid exploded into constituent particles, its structure unable to maintain cohesion against an attack that simply hit harder than its design parameters could withstand. Silence fell over Metropolis. Goku floated down slowly, his aura fading back to normal as he landed beside the still-stunned heroes. He looked apologetic. "Sorry about the windows," he said. "Is everyone okay?" On Apocalypse, Darkseid sat forward on his throne. The Avatar's dissolution had given him data-sensory information about the anomaly that the anti-life equation was still struggling to process. Power that didn't draw from the source. Reflexes that operated outside causality as DC understood it. A being that hit with the force of a concept, but existed as flesh and will. Intriguing. Darkseid said, his voice carrying satisfaction now. "You are not of this creation. Therefore, you are not protected by its rules. Therefore, you can be claimed." He stood again, but this time he did not send an avatar. This time he began the calculations necessary to manifest a projection of his true form, a semi-physical presence that would require the Bleed's architecture to contain. The anomaly had proven too valuable to approach with mere shadows. The Saiyan would be his. And through understanding this being from beyond the source wall, Darkseid would finally possess the key to completing the anti-life equation in its purest form. In Metropolis, Batman's voice came through every comm channel, simultaneously carrying urgency that bordered on fear. "We need to move this fight, now. If Darkseid manifests directly, this entire continent becomes collateral damage." Superman looked at Goku, who seemed more confused than concerned about having just destroyed an avatar of the universe's most dangerous tyrant. "Can you fly?" Clark asked. "Yeah, of course." "Then we need to take this somewhere else. Somewhere that can handle what's about to happen." Goku nodded, completely trusting, despite understanding nothing about the situation. "Okay. Lead the way." High above Earth Zero in the space between dimensions, the monitors began preparing emergency protocols. The anomaly had just attracted the attention of Darkseid's true consciousness. Whatever happened next would reshape the local multiverse in ways that couldn't be predicted. The Bleed itself seemed to pulse with anticipation, its red expanse waiting to host a confrontation between realities. The Watchtower hummed with activity that bordered on panic, though none of the Justice League members present would have admitted it. Banks of monitors displayed data that refused to stabilize quantum sensors, registering readings that violated every known principle of physics. At the center of the storm, Nix Wotan's projection stood translucent and grave, his eyes reflecting concerns that spanned dimensions. "You cannot allow the true form to manifest on Earth." The monitor said, each word carrying the authority of one who had witnessed reality's collapse. "If Darkseid descends fully into your dimensional layer, the weight of his presence alone will crack the planet's conceptual foundation. You have perhaps 5 minutes before he breaches the threshold." Batman's fingers moved across holographic controls with mechanical precision. Options: 1. The bleed. Nix Wotan gestured, and a three-dimensional map materialized, showing Earth Zero as a sphere surrounded by roiling crimson space. The fifth-dimensional membrane between universes. It can sustain conflict at that magnitude because it exists partially outside conventional reality. I can open a gateway, but understand this. What you're proposing is allowing a battleground in the infrastructure of the multiverse itself. Superman looked at Goku, who was examining a piece of advanced technology with the fascinated confusion of a child discovering a new toy. The Sai had agreed to everything asked of him with the simple trust of someone who genuinely believed everyone was trying to help. Clark felt a knot of concern tighten in his chest. "Goku," he said carefully, "what we're about to do is dangerous. The being you just fought was only a shadow. The real one is considerably more powerful." Goku looked up, and his smile carried excitement rather than fear. "Really? That's great. I haven't had a really good fight in a while." Flash made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a groan. "He's enjoying this. We're about to throw him at a god of tyranny, and he's enjoying it." "He's a warrior," Wonder Woman said quietly. "I understand the sentiment, even if the timing is unfortunate." The air in the watchtower's central chamber began to shimmer, not with heat or energy, but with a visual distortion of space being convinced to fold against its nature. The shimmer intensified, became a vertical slash of impossible crimson edges as crackling with the discharge of dimensional friction. Through the opening, they could see the bleed itself, an endless ocean of red that moved like liquid thought. "The gateway is open," Nix Wotan said, "and Darkseid has noticed. He's redirecting his manifestation toward this location. You have seconds." Goku stepped forward without hesitation, drawn by the promise of combat like iron to a lodestone. Superman caught his shoulder, then immediately regretted it, as Ultra Instinct flickered silver for half a heartbeat before Goku consciously suppressed it. "Sorry," both of them said simultaneously. Clark pulled his hand back. "Just be careful. We don't know what this will do to you." "I'll be fine," Goku said with the absolute confidence of someone who had survived impossible things so many times that survival had become routine. "This feels kind of like the world of Void where I fought Jiren. I've been in weird spaces before." He stepped through the gateway and vanished into red. The bleed embraced Goku with a sensation that his brain couldn't properly categorize. Not liquid, not gas, not solid, but somehow all three and none simultaneously. The space extended infinitely in every direction, a vast nothing filled with everything rivers of possibility flowing between distant spheres that he instinctively understood were entire universes. His ki flared automatically, creating a bubble of stable reality around his body. The bleed pressed against it curiously, not hostile, simply present in a way that made normal space seem like a cheap imitation. Colors existed here that had no names, directions that couldn't be mapped, distance that meant something other than measurement. "Okay," Goku said to the infinite expanse. "This is really weird." The pressure changed. It didn't build gradually. One instant the bleed was merely strange, the next it was being forced aside by a presence so massive that reality itself had to restructure its geometry to accommodate the intrusion. Goku's battle instincts honed across decades of fighting beings that could shatter planets, screamed a warning that transcended language. Something immense was arriving. Darkseid's projection manifested as a contradiction given form, not his true essence which existed in a realm beyond, the bleed's ability to contain, but a semi-physical expression of his willpower and absolute certainty in his own supremacy. The figure that took shape stood perhaps 50 feet tall, carved from shadows that predated light and wrapped in the fundamental concept of domination made manifest. His eyes opened, and the Omega effect blazed within them like the birth and death of galaxies compressed into a single eternal moment. Anomaly. Darkseid's voice rolled across the bleed like thunder across an ocean. You have caught my attention. This is both an honor and a condemnation. Explain your existence before I unmake it. Goku's aura burst into brilliant blue Super Saiyan, blue flooding his form with divine ki. The pressure from his transformation rippled outward, creating waves in the bleed that propagated toward distant universes. Somewhere alarms were triggering. Somewhere monitors were recalculating threat assessments. But in this moment, in this space between spaces, there was only warrior and tyrant god. I don't need to explain anything to you, Goku said, his voice carrying a firmness that hadn't been there during his friendly conversations with the Justice League. You attacked me first. All things exist to serve Darkseid, or be destroyed by him. You are no exception. The Omega effect struck like the concept of death given direction and velocity. Not beams this time, but waves of erasure that bent the bleed's geometry attacks that didn't just target Goku's body, but his existence itself, attempting to delete the fact that he had ever been from every timeline and possibility simultaneously. Ultra Instinct responded before conscious thought could even register the threat. Goku's body relocated through space, with movements that violated the bleed's physics, each dodge leaving after images that took seconds to fade because the space couldn't quite believe he'd moved that fast. His form wove between attacks that could erase concepts, silver light flickering across his aura as the technique pushed beyond its normal limits. Impossible, Darkseid said, and for the first time in millennia, genuine curiosity entered his tone. You move before the effect manifests. You dodge causality itself. Goku didn't answer with words. He simply moved, closing the distance between them, with acceleration that turned space into a blur. His fist wreathed in divine ki, and driven by strength that had shattered universal constants, struck Darkseid's projection square in the chest. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through 5 dimensions. The bleed convulsed its liquid architecture, temporarily crystallizing from the force before flowing back into its natural state. Darkseid staggered his form, flickering as the projection's stability wavered under an attack it hadn't been designed to withstand. You hit hard, the god acknowledged. Harder than Superman, harder than Doomsday. Your strength exists on a scale that this reality rarely witnesses. He struck back with a hand the size of a car moving with speed that belied his massive form. Goku blocked crossed arms, absorbing impact that sent him tumbling backward through the bleed for what might have been miles, or might have been inches. Distance was negotiable here. What mattered was force, and Darkseid's physical strikes carried the weight of cosmic authority. They clashed again and again and again. Each exchange sent ripples through the dimensional membrane. Goku's ki blasts carved temporary channels through the bleed substance columns of concentrated will that burned blue-white against the endless red. Darkseid answered with Omega beams that pursued their target through probability itself, attacks that would have annihilated planets diverted by reflexes operating faster than thought. On Earth Year Zero in the Watchtower, the Justice League watched through sensors that could barely process what they were seeing. Energy readings spiked into ranges labeled theoretical. Spatial distortions registered across 3 nearby universes. Batman's contingency algorithms couldn't keep up with the variables. He's fighting evenly with Darkseid, Flash said, his voice carrying disbelief. That shouldn't be possible. Darkseid is a god. So is he, Wonder Woman said quietly. Or something very close. Look at his movements. That's not training. That's instinct refined to the level of universal law. Superman said nothing. He simply watched, hoping that bringing Goku to this battleground wouldn't be the decision that broke the multiverse. In the bleed, Goku felt his body beginning to adapt. The strange space, the bizarre physics, the attacks that targeted existence rather than flesh, all of it was becoming familiar. Ultra Instinct was learning cataloging, adjusting. His dodges became sharper. His counters landed with greater precision. The technique that let his body move without thinking was teaching itself the rules of a new reality. Darkseid noticed. Of course he noticed. He was tyranny personified, but he was not blind. "You adapt," the god said, blocking a kick that would have shattered mountains. "Your technique learns my patterns. Fascinating. You are a weapon that sharpens itself through combat. No wonder you exist outside the equation's framework. You are not meant to submit. You are meant to overcome." "I just like getting stronger," Goku said, breathing hard, but grinning despite the exhaustion beginning to creep into his limbs. "Every fight teaches me something new." "Then learn this." Darkseid's eyes flared and the Omega effect manifested differently this time, not as beams or waves, but as a field. An area of conceptual pressure that declared Goku's resistance meaningless, his struggle futile, his very will to fight nothing but illusion waiting to be dispelled. The anti-life equation compressed into a weapon pressed against Goku's mind. It should have worked. The equation was fundamental, a mathematical proof that free will was fiction and all beings were slaves to forces beyond their comprehension. It had broken gods. It had shattered civilizations. It had rewritten the nature of sentient thought itself. It struck against Goku's consciousness like water against stone. The Saiyan's will forged through decades of pushing past limits that shouldn't be surpassable, refined by battles against destroyers and angels, and beings that existed beyond mortal comprehension, simply refused the equation's logic. Not through resistance, not through some special immunity, but through the sheer, straightforward stubbornness of someone who had never learned that some things were supposed to be impossible. "No," Goku said, and the word carried absolute certainty. "I decide what I do. Nobody else." His aura exploded outward, divine ki flooding the space around him with a pressure that made the bleed itself recoil. For a moment, just a moment, his presence burned so brightly that it rivaled Darkseid's cosmic weight. They clashed again, fist against fist, god against warrior tyranny, against freedom given form. The bleed screamed silently around them, its architecture straining under forces it was barely equipped to contain. And in the spaces between their attacks in the microseconds, where neither combatant held advantage, something else began to stir. The residue of ancient battles fought in this space, fragments of equations, both anti-life and its opposite, started to resonate with the strange frequency of Goku's ki. The life equation, scattered and dormant, recognized something familiar in the Saiyan's vital energy. It began slowly to wake. The life equation had no consciousness in the way mortals understood the term. It was pattern and principle, the fundamental mathematics of existence, given purpose, the inverse, an answer to everything, anti-life represented. Where Darkseid's formula declared that freedom was illusion and submission was truth, the life equation whispered that will created reality and choice shaped destiny. It had been shattered long ago, scattered across the bleed in fragments too small to coalesce, residue from battles between new gods that had reshaped the architecture of multiple universes. For eons, it had drifted powerless, waiting for something that could give it form again. Goku's ki burned through the bleed like a torch in darkness, and the fragments recognized what they had been searching for. Not a god, not a cosmic being architected by the source, but something purer, something that existed outside the frameworks that had scattered the equation in the first place. A will that had never learned to submit. A life force that defied categorization. A being whose very existence declared that limits were meant to be surpassed. The fragments began to move. Goku didn't notice at first. He was too focused on not dying, too occupied with the impossible task of matching strikes with a projection of one of the multiverse's most powerful entities. His body screamed exhaustion. Ultra instinct could make him untouchable, but maintaining it in this strange space while fighting at this intensity was draining him faster than any battle he could remember. Darkseid's fist caught him across the jaw, and the impact sent him spiraling through the bleed's crimson expanse. He stabilized himself with a burst of kai-tasting copper, feeling his consciousness waver for a fraction of a second before training and discipline snapped it back to focus. "You weaken," Darkseid observed, pursuing with the inevitability of an avalanche. "Your technique sustains itself on energy you do not possess in infinite quantities. Admirable Saiyan, but ultimately futile. You cannot outlast Darkseid." The god was right. Goku could feel his reserves depleting divine ki burning through his cells faster than they could regenerate. In Universe 7, he could draw on ambient energy, pull power from his surroundings, even absorb the life force of willing donors. Here in this space between realities, there was nothing to draw from except his own dwindling strength. He dodged another Omega beam by instinct, his body relocating itself 3 dimensions to the left. His breathing came harder now. Sweat evaporated instantly in the bleed's bizarre atmosphere. He was losing, and he knew it, and the knowledge just made him grin wider, because the best fights were always the ones that pushed him to his absolute limit. That was when the fragments touched him. The sensation was nothing like absorbing a spirit bomb or fusing with another warrior. This was gentler, more intimate, like something recognizing him at a level deeper than genetics or spirit. The life equation's remnants brushed against his kai, and his kai responded with the simple honesty that characterized everything about Goku's existence. "Yes, I am alive. I choose to be here. I choose to fight. Nobody makes these choices for me." The fragments sang in response mathematics, translating into something his Saiyan instincts could understand. They didn't merge with him, didn't transform him into something other than what he was. They simply stabilized his presence in this reality, creating resonance between his vital energy and the bleed's underlying structure. Goku's aura shifted. The brilliant blue of Super Saiyan Blue began to fade, but not into weakness. Instead, silver light bloomed from his core ultra instinct, asserting itself with a purity it had never achieved before. The silver mixed with white, then gold colors that shouldn't blend, creating a radiance that made the bleed's crimson seem pale by comparison. His hair remained black, but strands of white threaded through it like lightning frozen in midnight. His eyes opened, and they held the depthless silver of technique perfected, backed by something new, something the fragments had helped him touch. Primal ultra instinct. Not a transformation imposed from outside, but the ultimate refinement of what he already was. Instinct sharpened to the point where it could perceive and react to threats that existed outside conventional reality. Will strengthened to the degree that equations attempting to prove its non-existence simply failed to compute. The exhaustion didn't vanish. The power drain didn't stop. But the bleed stopped fighting him, stopped treating him as a foreign object in a system designed to reject anything from outside DC's cosmology. He became, for this moment, something it could accommodate. Darkseid saw the change and knew immediately what it meant. The life equation. You have achieved resonance with its scattered remnants. Clever Saiyan, Unintentional, certainly, but clever nonetheless. "I don't know what that means," Goku said, and his voice carried harmonics it hadn't possessed before, undertones that resonated with the bleed itself. "But I feel different, clearer. Like I can see the shape of your attacks before you even decide to make them. Then see this." Darkseid unleashed everything. The Omega effect manifested as a storm beams, and waves and fields of erasure converging from every angle simultaneously. He struck with fists that could shatter moons, moved with speed that made light seem stationary. Applied pressure through the anti-life equation that attempted to convince reality itself that Goku's resistance was mathematically impossible. Goku met it all with movements that transcended combat into something closer to art. His body flowed between attacks that targeted past, present, and future versions of himself. Ultra instinct operating at a level where time became just another variable to navigate. He wasn't dodging anymore. He was existing in the spaces between Darkseid's strikes, occupying the gaps in causality itself. His counterattacks landed with precision that bordered on supernatural. Each punch found weak points in Darkseid's projection stress fractures in the semi-physical form, where the god's true essence connected imperfectly with this dimensional layer. Not enough to destroy, never enough to truly harm something as vast as Darkseid's consciousness, but enough to disrupt, to destabilize, to prove that even tyranny incarnate could be challenged. They fought across the bleed for what might have been seconds or hours. Time was negotiable here, and both combatants had transcended its normal constraints. Goku's aura blazed brighter with each exchange, the life equation's fragments cycling power through his form in patterns that mimicked DC's underlying cosmic structure. He wasn't drawing energy from them exactly, more like borrowing their understanding of how to exist here without being consumed by the contradictions. In the watchtower, alarms shrieked warnings about dimensional integrity. Multiple Earths were reporting gravitational anomalies. The bleed's membrane was warping under pressures it had never been designed to sustain. Nix Wotan's projection flickered, his attention divided between maintaining the gateway and trying to minimize the damage rippling across his jurisdiction. "He's adapting faster than Darkseid can adjust," the monitor said, wonder creeping into his normally impassive voice. "The anomaly is learning our reality's rules in real time and using them against an entity that has mastered those same rules across millennia. This should not be possible." Batman's fingers moved across controls, recording everything, already building contingencies for scenarios he prayed would never manifest. "We need to end this, soon, before the bleed itself becomes collateral damage." In the battle's heart, Goku sensed the same thing. His instincts refined now to perceive dimensional stress as clearly as physical threats registered that this space couldn't sustain much more. The bleed was tough, resilient, designed to handle cosmic conflicts. But there were limits even to its tolerance. He needed to finish this. Not kill Darkseid, which was impossible anyway, since this was only a projection of something far vaster. But push him back, force the god to withdraw, prove that this particular fight was not worth the cost of continuing. Goku's aura condensed, pulling inward until it became a second skin of radiant silver-white gold. He could feel the life equation fragments singing in harmony with his Kai, their mathematics and his battle instinct creating something that neither could have achieved alone. Power gathered in his core, not just physical strength, but will given weight choice, given form, the fundamental declaration that he existed and could not be erased. "Hey," he called to Darkseid, who had paused in their exchange, studying him with those burning eyes. "This has been a really good fight, one of the best I've had. But I think we need to stop before we break something important." Darkseid does not stop. Dark side persists until all opposition ceases. Then I'll have to make you stop. He moved, not attacking multiple points or attempting complex strategies. Just one strike, straight and clean, and delivered with every ounce of power his body could channel through the life equation's resonance. His fist wreathed in light that carried the mathematical proof of existence's right to resist tyranny, drove toward Darkseid's core. The projection tried to counter, to block, to redirect the attack into dimensions where it would dissipate harmlessly. But primal ultra instinct saw through every defense before it could form a adjusted trajectory through angles that physics insisted didn't exist and struck true. The impact was silent. Not because there was no sound, but because the collision of forces transcended the bleed's ability to translate it into acoustic information. For an instant, Goku's will and Darkseid's essence occupied the same point in space, and reality had to choose which one took precedence. It chose the one fighting to protect rather than dominate. Darkseid's projection destabilized. Not destroyed, never truly destroyed, but forced into incoherence. The semi-physical form fractured its connection to the true essence beyond the bleed, severing as the god's consciousness retreated to layers of existence where the Saiyan's punch couldn't reach. The vast presence withdrew, and the pressure crushing down on the bleed eased like storm clouds parting. Darkseid's voice echoed from dimensions away, carrying neither rage nor defeat, merely acknowledgement. Well struck, Saiyan. You have earned Darkseid's attention. When next we meet, it will be on terms that favor neither of us. Until then, remember this, you have not won. You have merely corrected an imbalance. Then he was gone, and Goku floated alone in the bleed's crimson vastness. The primal ultra instinct began to fade immediately. Whatever resonance the life equation fragments had created was temporary, sustainable only in the heat of that specific battle. The white-gold-silver light dimmed back to his normal aura, and exhaustion hit him like a collapsing mountain. He'd won. Sort of. Maybe. He'd definitely not lost, which was basically the same thing. Goku let himself drift too tired to maintain flight, trusting that the people who'd brought him here would know how to bring him back. His last conscious thought before the fatigue pulled him under was simple and satisfied. That had been a really good fight. The bleed trembled in the aftermath, its crimson expanse rippling with aftershocks that propagated across dimensional boundaries like waves crossing an infinite ocean. Where Goku and Darkseid had clashed, the membrane showed stress fractures, hairline cracks in the fifth-dimensional architecture that would take millennia to fully heal. The space itself seemed to exhale, releasing tension. It had accumulated during a battle that had pushed its tolerance to the breaking point. Goku drifted unconscious through the red vastness, his body limp, but his aura still flickering with residual silver light. The life equation fragments had returned to their dormant state, scattered once more across the bleed's expanse. But they had left traces in his Kai signature. Patterns that shouldn't exist in a being from outside DC's cosmology, mathematical harmonies that whispered he had touched something fundamental to this reality structure. Superman was the first through the gateway, moving with speed, born from genuine concern rather than tactical necessity. He caught Goku before the Saiyan could drift further into the bleed's depths, cradling the unconscious warrior with the care of someone who understood exactly how dangerous this space was for beings not designed to exist within it. "I've got him," Clark said into his comm, already turning back toward the portal that Nick's Wotan held open with visible strain. "He's alive. Unconscious, but alive." Wonder Woman appeared beside him, having followed through the gateway without hesitation. She studied Goku's face, noting the peace there despite the obvious exhaustion. He fought like the champions of old Olympus, with joy in his heart and no fear of the outcome. He also nearly cracked the bleed. Batman's voice cut through transmitting from the watchtower where he monitored readings that still refused to stabilize. Dimensional stress is propagating across 3 universes, minor but measurable. Earth 23 is reporting gravitational fluctuations. Earth 11's magnetic poles shifted 2 degrees. We need him back in normal space before his residual energy signature causes more disruptions. Superman nodded and moved toward the portal, Wonder Woman keeping pace beside him. They crossed back into the watchtower's medical bay in seconds, laying Goku on a bed designed to accommodate superhuman physiology. His breathing was steady, if shallow. The silver traces in his aura faded gradually, like embers cooling after a fire. Flash arrived in a burst of Speed Force energy carrying sensor readouts that made his expression oscillate between excitement and concern. Okay, so the good news is he's not dying. The better news is Darkseid's completely withdrawn. No apocalypsean signatures anywhere in local space. And the bad news? Superman asked, though he suspected he already knew. The bleed is ringing like a bell someone hit with a hammer. Multiple Earths are experiencing what the monitors are calling resonance events. Nothing catastrophic, but definitely noticeable. Reality hiccuped basically because 2 forces that weren't supposed to coexist in the same dimensional layer just tried to destroy each other. In the watchtower's observation deck, Nix Wotan's projection studied holographic displays showing the local multiverse in real time. 52 universes, each represented as a sphere in the vast structure called the Orrery of Worlds, and 3 of them were showing anomalous readings. Not critical yet, but requiring attention. The damage is containable, the monitor said, though his tone carried the weight of someone performing triage on cosmic scales. The bleed is self-repairing. The affected universes will recalibrate within days. But this was closer to disaster than I am comfortable acknowledging. A new presence manifested in the observation deck, and every Justice League member felt it simultaneously. Not a rival, because the being had always been there, watching from layers of reality that intersected with normal space without truly occupying it. Now, he simply chose to be visible. The specter stood 9 feet tall, wrapped in a hooded cloak the color of judgment itself, green and gray, and carrying the weight of divine authority. His face remained shadowed, but his eyes burned with emerald fire that saw through flesh and spirit to the truth beneath. I here have observed. The spirit of vengeance set his voice resonating with harmonics that made stone tremble and souls quail. From the moment the anomaly entered our creation, I have watched and weighed his actions against the scales of cosmic law. Superman stepped forward, positioning himself between the specter and Goku's unconscious form without consciously deciding to do so. He's not a criminal. He didn't ask to be here, to be. No. The specter agreed, and there was neither warmth nor coldness in his tone, only absolute certainty. He is displaced, a soul untainted by malice cast into a reality not his own by circumstances beyond his control. I find no corruption in his spirit, no darkness that requires cleansing, no sin that demands retribution. He moved closer, and the watchtower's atmosphere seemed to compress under the weight of his presence. The specter looked down at Goku, and for a moment something almost like approval flickered in those burning eyes. This one fights not from hatred or hunger for power, but from the pure joy of testing his limits. His will remains unbowed by offers of dominion or threats of annihilation. Even the anti-life equation found no purchase in a soul that has never questioned its right to choose. Wonder Woman inclined her head respectfully. Then you will not punish him for the disruption he caused? Punishment implies wrongdoing. There is none here, only consequence, which is a different matter entirely. The specter's gaze swept across the assembled heroes. His presence creates instability by simple virtue of existing in a framework not designed to accommodate beings of his nature. The longer he remains, the greater the risk of catastrophic resonance. So, what happens to him? Flash asked quietly. He returns home. I will open the way once he wakes. The specter's voice carried finality, the pronouncement of one whose judgments could not be appealed. The presence itself has observed this matter. The Saiyan is not ours to keep, not ours to condemn, not ours to employ. He is simply other, and creation works best when each being occupies the reality suited to its fundamental nature. Batman spoke from the Watchtower's command station, his voice cutting through with characteristic precision. Can you guarantee he'll arrive safely? If the bleed was stressed by his battle, using it again as a transit point seems risky. I do not use the bleed. I open doors that exist above such mechanisms, pathways that transcend dimensional membranes, entirely. The specter turned his attention, fixing on each League member in turn. When he wakes, he will have a choice. Return home or remain and risk further destabilization. But I trust his judgment. Despite his simplicity, or perhaps because of it, this Goku possesses wisdom that more sophisticated minds often lack. The pronouncement made the specter begin to fade, his presence withdrawing back to the layers of reality where divine judgment waited eternal and patient. One more thing. Superman called before the spirit of vengeance could fully depart. If he hadn't fought Darkseid, what would have happened? The specter paused, partially visible, partially not. Darkseid would have claimed him, studied him, weaponized his existence against the foundations of free will itself. The Saiyan chose to resist. That choice, freely made, created ripples of its own. Not all consequences are negative, Superman. Some simply are neither punishment nor reward, but the universe adjusting to accommodate impossible things. Then he was gone completely, leaving the Justice League alone with their unconscious guest. Goku stirred on the medical bed, consciousness returning gradually. His eyes opened unfocused at first, then clearing as awareness filtered back. He looked around at the concerned faces surrounding him and smiled with reflexive warmth. "Did I win?" he asked, his voice rough but genuinely curious. "You survived," Wonder Woman said, and there was respect in her tone. "Against Darkseid, that alone constitutes victory." Goku sat up slowly, testing his body's response. Sore everywhere, energy depleted to levels that would take days to fully recover, but intact, whole, still himself. "Man," he said, grinning despite the exhaustion. "That was intense. Is everyone okay? I didn't break anything too important, did I?" Superman's laugh came unexpectedly, tension releasing in a sound that carried relief and disbelief in equal measure. "A few universes need recalibrating, but nothing catastrophic. You did good, Goku." "Cool." The Saiyan stretched, joints popping, then looked around with the beginning awareness of someone remembering they were lost. "So, any chance you guys figured out how to get me home?" Batman's voice answered from the speakers. "The Spectre is prepared to open a portal when you're ready. Direct passage back to your universe, bypassing the bleed entirely." Goku's expression brightened, then fell slightly. "Oh, so this is goodbye then?" "For now," Superman said, extending his hand and then remembering the Ultra Instinct problem. He held it there, anyway, waiting. Goku looked at the offered hand, concentrated for a moment, and the faint silver shimmer around him dimmed to nothing. I think I can turn it off now that I'm not in danger. Let me try. He reached out and clasped Superman's hand. No reflexive dodge, no automatic defense. Just a handshake between warriors who had shared something rare and strange. Thanks for the help, Goku said. And sorry about the trouble. If I'm ever back this way, maybe we can spar for real, without the whole cosmic crisis thing. Clark smiled. I'd like that. Just call ahead next time. The Watchtower's observation deck had witnessed countless farewells. Over the years, heroes departing for missions they might not return from allies, leaving for distant worlds, friends saying goodbye before retirement or sacrifice. But this felt different, lighter somehow, despite the cosmic implications of everything that had transpired. Goku stood at the center of the chamber, looking entirely too relaxed for someone who had just fought a god and nearly cracked the infrastructure of the multiverse. He'd spent the last hour eating, which had startled the League almost as much as his combat abilities. The Watchtower's food synthesizers, designed to accommodate Kryptonian metabolisms and Amazonian appetites, had struggled to keep pace with Saiyan's post-battle hunger. Goku had apologized profusely while demolishing his 7th full meal, explaining between bites that fighting always made him hungry. Now stomach full and energy partially restored, he faced the people who had helped him navigate this strange reality with the same genuine warmth he'd shown from the first moment of contact. I really appreciate everything you guys did, Goku said, bowing slightly in the formal manner Whis had taught him for showing respect to equals. I know I caused a lot of problems, but you still tried to help instead of just locking me up somewhere. Superman stepped forward, his expression carrying fondness that surprised even him. In the span of hours, this stranger from an impossible distance had become something like a friend. You didn't cause problems intentionally. And watching you fight, seeing that kind of pure determination, that reminded me why we do this in the first place. Wonder Woman moved to stand beside Clark, her warrior's bearing softened by something approaching admiration. You would be welcome in Themyscira, Goku. The Amazons honor those who fight with joy in their hearts and mercy in their hands. That combination is rarer than you might think. Goku's grin widened. Really? That sounds awesome. Maybe if I figure out how to visit without breaking reality, I'll come by for some sparring. Flash laughed, the sound carrying relief that the crisis had ended without catastrophe. Just give us a heads up first so we can, evacuate the eastern seaboard or something. Your casual sparring hits harder than most villain doomsday weapons. Batman's voice came through the speakers, and though his tone remained controlled, there was something in it that might have been approval from someone less guarded. Contingency files have been updated. In the event you return, we'll know how to accommodate your presence without triggering dimensional stress. The data from this encounter will help protect both realities. Thanks, Batman. Goku called to the air, still not entirely sure where the voice was coming from. You're good at planning stuff. We could use someone like you in Universe 7. The observation deck's atmosphere shifted, pressure changing in a way that made mortal senses ache. Reality folded and the specter manifested once more, his presence less overwhelming than before, but still carrying the weight of divine authority. In his hands, or the concept of hands that his form suggested, something shimmered. Not a physical object, but a tear in space itself, edges burning with emerald fire. The way is open. The spirit of vengeance announced. This gateway leads beyond the bleed, beyond the orrery of worlds, beyond DC's cosmological structure entirely. It connects to the frequency signature of your origin Saiyan. Step through and you will return to the moment immediately following your departure. Your teacher will be waiting." Goku looked at the portal, at the swirling nothing, and everything contained within its boundaries, and felt homesickness hit him properly, for the first time since arriving. Whis would be worried. Beerus would probably destroy a planet out of irritation. Vegeta would never let him live down getting lost during training. But before he could step forward, a small part of him hesitated. This place, these people had been strange and confusing and absolutely fascinating. Part of him wanted to stay to explore this reality where gods fought in the spaces between universes and equations could prove or disprove the existence of free will. Superman noticed the hesitation and understood it immediately. "You can come back," he said gently. "Not today, maybe not for a long time. But if you find a way that doesn't risk both our realities, you'd be welcome here." "Do you really mean that?" Goku asked. "Even after everything that happened?" Clark smiled, especially after everything that happened. "You fought to protect people you'd never met in a reality you didn't understand against a threat you had no obligation to face. That makes you a hero by any definition I recognize." Wonder Woman placed her hand over her heart in the Themysciran gesture of respect between equals. Flash gave a casual salute that somehow conveyed genuine affection. Even Batman's silence felt approving, his continued monitoring a form of acknowledgement from someone who trusted actions more than words. Goku bowed again deeper this time, trying to express gratitude that his simple vocabulary couldn't quite capture. "Thank you, all of you. This was one of the best adventures I've had, even with all the scary parts." He turned toward the portal, then paused and looked back at Superman one more time. "Hey, Clark. Next time we meet, I'll be even stronger, so you better keep training too. Okay, I want our rematch to be legendary." Superman's laugh echoed through the observation deck. "I'll do my best, though I have a feeling you'll always be a few steps ahead." "Maybe." Goku said, his grin carrying the confidence of someone who lived for surpassing limits. "But that just means the chase will be more fun." He stepped toward the portal, but before crossing the threshold, his expression shifted to something more serious. "Oh, and tell that dark side guy something for me. Tell him that trying to control people with equations and formulas won't ever really work, because the best part of being alive is choosing what to do with it. Even if he proves free will is impossible, people will just decide to be free anyway." The specter's burning eyes regarded Goku with something that might have been amusement in a being capable of such emotion. A philosophy both simple and profound. "I will ensure your message reaches him, though I suspect he already learned that lesson through more direct means." Goku nodded satisfied and walked into the portal without hesitation or fear. The gateway swallowed him in emerald fire and cosmic light. And then he was gone, returned to a reality that operated on different principles and acknowledged different gods. The portal sealed behind him with finality, leaving the Justice League standing in sudden silence. "Well," Flash said eventually, "that was definitely the weirdest Tuesday we've had in at least a month." Wonder Woman shook her head, smiling. "He called it an adventure. We called it a crisis. Perhaps the difference in perspective says something about the nature of heroism itself." Superman walked to the observation window, looking out at Earth, spinning peacefully below. Somewhere out there, the bleed was still healing. Monitors were still recalibrating affected universes. And Darkseid had withdrawn to Apocalypse, presumably to contemplate the nature of beings that existed outside his equation's ability to categorize. But here now, everything felt strangely right. As if the universe had been tested and found resilient enough to accommodate impossible things. In Universe 7, Goku materialized in the no-time dimension exactly where he'd vanished, continuity restored, as if the entire journey had occurred in the space between heartbeats. Whis stood waiting, Staff lowered his expression, carrying relief wrapped in divine composure. "Goku-san," the angel said calmly, though his eyes betrayed genuine concern. "That was deeply irresponsible. You could have been lost in another creation permanently." "Sorry, Whis," Goku said, scratching his head sheepishly. "But I learned a lot. There's this technique called the Omega Effect, and this space called the Bleed. And I met these heroes called the Justice League, and I fought this god named Darkseid, who was really, really strong." Whis sighed with the patience of one who had supervised this particular student through countless reckless decisions. "I'm sure it was all very educational. Now, shall we continue your training? And this time, please try not to tear holes in the fabric of reality itself." "Sure thing," Goku said, grinning. "But Whis, do you think we could figure out a safe way to visit other universes? Sometime I promised some new friends I'd come back for a rematch." The angel considered this, his expression thoughtful. "Perhaps. Though I suspect the multiverse might not survive regular social calls from you, Goku-san. Some friendships are best maintained at a considerable distance." Far away in the spaces between DC's infinite Earths, the Bleed continued its eternal flow. The stress fractures were healing, the dimensional resonance fading, and the life equation fragments had returned to their scattered slumber. But something had changed, subtle and permanent. The membrane remembered the same. And who had touched it, the warrior whose vital energy had resonated with the fundamental mathematics of existence itself. It remembered his laughter, his determination, his absolute refusal to accept that any limit was truly insurmountable. And in the halls of cosmic record where monitors maintained their eternal watch, a new entry appeared in the archives of multiversal anomalies. Designation: the Sainted Monkey. Classification: non-malicious anomaly from external creation. Threat level: catastrophic if hostile. Negligible due to benevolent nature. Status: return to origin universe. Recommendation: welcome if returns peacefully. Evacuate eastern seaboard if combat becomes necessary. Note: demonstrated that beings from outside source framework can achieve resonance with fundamental DC principles. Implications for multiversal theory profound. Implications for anti-life equation troubling. Implications for future crossover events fascinating. Final assessment crisis averted. Reality intact. Friendship established across impossible distance. Some victories are measured not in threats neutralized, but in connections forged despite cosmic impossibility. The multiverse breathed vast and patient and infinite in its capacity to accommodate wonder. And somewhere in the spaces between realities, two warriors who should never have met looked toward distant horizons and smiled, knowing that distance was just another limit waiting to be surpassed.